Hello everyone, welcome back to the Aspergian Journal. This video is a bit of an add-on to the last video that I did where I talked a bit more about my autism backstory, and I did say in that video that I was wanting to talk about the autistic spectrum and neurodiversity overall. But after looking at the footage of that first video, and I felt it would be a bit better to split the two points up. So this second video is focusing more on the autistic spectrum and neurodiversity, and also comparing what medical professionals might tell you about autism compared to the day-to-day living experiences of being on the autistic spectrum. The autistic spectrum is a spectrum of different varieties of autism. So at one end of the spectrum you'll have like your classic autism, those that have got severe mobility difficulties, and tend to need to have a lot more support in their day-to-day lives. Whilst at the other end of the spectrum you have like people with Asperger's syndrome like myself, where we do have a very high IQ and we don't necessarily need support and that in terms of being able to move around. It's more of a case of like social skills and communicating with others, and that which is the common denominator for those that are on the spectrum. Other neurodiversity conditions, which I refer to as traits, because I don't really like the word condition, because it makes it sound like it's something that has to be treated or cured, when that is not the case at all. It's mainly about different learning styles and how we interact with the world and how we process information. That's what that's the difference between neurodiverse people and those that are neurotypical. So people that aren't on the autistic spectrum or who haven't got a neurodiversity trait. Neurodiverse conditions, or traits as I refer to them as, can consist of dyslexia, ADHD, dyspraxia, Down syndrome, epilepsy, and many others. For myself, when I got nearly re-diagnosed and at 19 years old as someone with Asperger's syndrome, there were certain characteristics where I had mild dyslexia as well. But I don't officially have like a formal diagnosis of dyslexia. Mainly, the elements of dyslexia that I have, and that is more related to my Asperger's more than it being a separate diagnosis. The only link to dyslexia that I have is where my processing speed and that is a bit slower and that than what your average neurotypical person can do. Today's official definition of the autistic spectrum, or as they refer to it as the autism spectrum disorder, is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn and behave. And there's also been quite a lot of studies over the years in terms of how far back does the history of autism go. And when it comes to Asperger's syndrome, it was actually founded by Hans Asperger in the late 1940s after World War II. And throughout the 20th century, he tried to do numerous studies to demonstrate that autistic people that had this particular autism and that were had a very high Q and very intellectual, but they still had the very common characteristics like lack of eye-to-eye contact when communicating with others, and sometimes can talk in a bit of a monotone voice that sometimes doesn't always show, other forms of expression, and sometimes find it very hard to understand social clues like sarcasm or jokes, and none of which they might take seriously, even though they were just merely a joke and they were not directly put to someone. Amongst the science community, usually they've always looked at the textbook views of autism, and they developed something called the medical model, which essentially views disability and neurodiversity as something that needs to be cured or fixed. And obviously autism, and that does come under neurodiversity. But to compare that to someone who has actually got the living experience with autism, how can they say that it's something that needs to be cured or fixed? I can tell you now, if you asked a lot of autistic people about would there be anything about their autism that they would change, including myself, and I can guarantee you most of the time, especially if they are at peace with themselves and who they are as an individual, I can tell you now that they'll tell you no. They see their autism, or if you have a neurodiverse trait like dyslexia, ADHD, or any of the other conditions that come under that umbrella, if anything, it makes them the people that they are. Growing up, I did used to question, and was I autistic, or did I really fit the original description or the original diagnosis that I was given as classic autism with moderate learning difficulties, even though I did have a quite a good IQ, from an early age. So how does that work? Despite the challenges and the adversity that I've overcome and experienced, throughout the course of my life, I can tell you right here and now that there is nothing that I would want to change about my autism, because it makes me who I am. You have to come to terms with who you are and work with what you've got. Sometimes in that you can't always choose it. You can't choose to be autistic or not. Science would also tell us that autism and that can be caused and that by genetics and that from the male side, and sometimes external influences can have an impact on a baby's development, and that if they turn out to be autistic or not. And you have to take quite a big pinch of salt to what you read and what you listen to. it's like with anything, you know, a baby and that could be born and ends up having cerebral palsy, even though there might be no history in the family, and that has that similar condition, or shall I say, as trait. So instead of having this overemphasis of trying to categorise people, or segregating them into like categories of conditions or disabilities, it's more about accepting people for who they are and let them embrace themselves and that as individuals. And that leads on nicely to the second point of the social model, which views disability and neurodiversity in a different way. About being more inclusive and focus on adapting society to become more accessible for all. Even though that might sound like a very good idea, but it's not always easy as it sounds. And even I know this over the course of my life. In anything that I've done, working for other people or starting this journey that I'm on, or even when I was in college and university, I tried to, be a true living example of what an autistic person can do if you give them the encouragement, the support, and and the inspiration and that starts them off on that journey for where they want to go and what they want to achieve in their lives. And my old saying really is, anything is achievable if you put your heart and soul into something. And that is the attitude and that I've carried, throughout a majority of my life in anything that I have done. The only person that can limit themselves or stop from achieving what they want to achieve is you. If you have the self-belief in wanting to seek out what you want to achieve and you work hard towards that goal or objective, then by all means go out there and do it and really show that you can really prove people wrong, just like I did. Another common theme that you'll find amongst the autistic spectrum and any other neurodiverse traits is mental health, specifically anxiety. Anxiety is a spectrum in itself in terms of mental health, and there is quite a wide variety of different anxiety disorders and that one can suffer from, and autistic people are more likely to develop a mental health disorder alongside their autism than any other person in society. The spectrum can consist of OCD, general anxiety disorder, a wide range of phobias. Quite a mixed. I could do a separate video on anxiety in itself and how it does impact autistic people in particular. Over the course of my life as an autistic person, I've suffered anxiety and now quite severely on certain occasions, and it has been a battle to try and stay strong and to not let it get to me. The thing about mental health is that in society, why are we so addicted to people just self-medicating themselves, like with antidepressants and any other form of medicine, And that when it doesn't really resolve the root cause of what causes your anxiety, rather than addressing it head on, you're just hiding the issue or brushing it under a carpet, which in turn just puts you in that vicious cycle, in the hamster wheel, and that never stops. Even though you might have the desire and to want to overcome your anxiety and get yourself out of this, visually black hole that you might be under. But sometimes it's very hard to escape from that if you're just caught up in that vicious cycle until you tackle what the main causes are and for your anxiety to occur, and and tackle those issues head on, one by one. And I'm telling you this because I've been there myself. I've suffered with anxiety and depression, especially growing up as a teenager. Around that time, I was more confused about who was I as an autistic person, as well as dealing with bullying at school and and loneliness as well, because I've always been a bit of a loner, like Billy No Mates. But I could talk about loneliness and that in another video on its own. But that does not mean that it doesn't have an impact on autistic people. It does. And that's another thing about autistic people, is that they do want to have friends and be more friendly towards others, but sometimes they just don't know how to, or how to approach it in the right way. And I think with society as it is now, I think it makes it even more harder for autistic people to make friends. Not only because it's, the dynamics of social interaction is a lot different nowadays. It's more online rather than person to person. But also it's the level of rejection and that autistic people can endure, in that pursuit to have more friends in their lives. And as I was saying about anxiety, instead of it being like a separate disorder to autistic people, it is more of the cornerstone of the autistic spectrum. I cannot think of one autistic person that I have come across that has not suffered with anxiety at some point in their lives. And there's always a wide variety of how they manage, their own situations. How I managed, my own situation, and dealt with it in a positive way might be totally different to how someone else and that manages their own situation. And that's what I mean. We are all individuals. We're unique. How one person deals with their autism is different to how someone else deals with theirs. I spent a good proportion of my childhood, trying to not be autistic, just to try and fit in. But all that led to is me, being under that severe self-pressure, trying to fit in, and it wasn't doing me any favours. I was like a dog chasing its own tail. It's not getting anywhere. So I had to learn the hard way of accepting who I was as an autistic person, but also, try and develop as an individual to be able to cope through life and develop moving forward, so you can get towards the goals and achievements that you want to create. as a result of this, I knew that I had to do something about the situation that I was in terms of my anxiety and address the issue head on. It wasn't an easy task. And there was a time where I was on antidepressants, and that because my anxiety did get really bad. But I knew that I could not just stay on this medication and hoping that my issues would fade away. It doesn't work like that. Antidepressants not only help with your symptoms, physical symptoms of anxiety, to regulate them, and so it doesn't impact you as much, but it doesn't really resolve the issue that you have in your mind, or whatever's causing you stress or anxiety. And that's why you have to look at other avenues of treatment, like cognitive behavioural therapy, that that helps you, address, get to the root cause of what's causing your anxiety and or stress, and and work out a bit of a strategy on how you go from where you are to where you want to be. Now, obviously, on the face of it, when you are under that real black cloud of anxiety, it feels like an impossible task. But if you really stick at it and you put the hard work in, you will start to see results. Years ago, when I was on antidepressants, I made the decision and to stop taking them, because it was just keeping me in that vicious cycle that I just did not want to be in. And if I'd not made that decision, I would have not gone on to make the success that I had at college and university. I passed my driving test and at the age of 25. I would have been in no fit state whatsoever to get behind the wheel of a car. And if I'd have not addressed my mental health head on. Now, that's not to say that I don't suffer with anxiety anymore, because I still have moments of anxiety. As I've said, earlier, it's a cornerstone of the autistic spectrum, and that's just something that autistic people and neurotypical people who are wanting to learn from this have to accept. But as well as cognitive behavioural therapy, but you can also look at different strategies like mindfulness, and other forms of therapy, and all that can really help you address whatever your situation is, and get you to a place of where you want to be, rather than being stuck in that vicious cycle of your current situation that you want to escape from. But how people treat their mental health, and that is just as unique as individuals. What one course of treatment or strategy that you might use and that to help you overcome your anxiety or mental health is different to how someone else does. To bring this back round to autistic people, yes, and that they are more prone and that to having anxiety issues, but don't think for 1 minute that can stop them from wanting to achieve great things in their lives. And that does not cloud the potential that they have. Sometimes it's just that little bit of inspiration that they need to start them off on their own journeys towards success and great achievement. They maybe just don't know it yet. From my experience, I've usually found that autistic people are some of the most politest and well-mannered people that you might ever come across. And it's just a shame that society does not do more, to help them achieve their individual potentials and provide them the support that they need to live, fulfilling, independent lives. Despite their flaws, and we all have them, and we're all not perfect, but if you give them the encouragement and the support that they need, whatever stages of their lives that they are at, they can go on to achieve great things. Might not be great things in terms of societal standards or expectations, but for them, it's like they've climbed Mount Everest and come back down again. It's an achievement to them, where to others it might be nothing. And that's the one thing that neurotypical people don't seem to understand. Autistic people have had to fight for things that neurotypical people take for granted, like socialising with others and not really identifying what social clues are, which causes confusion and sometimes lack of understanding and that of what an autistic person's intentions are, and neurotypical people just don't give them the space and that to express what their intentions are in a positive way. But I really want to end this video on a positive note. Autistic people, with the right support and the right guidance and that little source of inspiration, they can go on to achieve great things and live fulfilling and independent lives. But obviously the awareness has to be better, and society, I think, needs to learn to accept autistic people for who they are. But unfortunately, we live in a society that is not going to change entirely to suit autistic people. And this is coming from someone who has been there and done that and is currently working towards that for myself. I want to tell you one thing. And this is my inspiration to you today. Never let anyone or anything in this entire world stop you from chasing your dreams and work hard on the path to making them reality. Sometimes you have to find that inner strength, and it comes out of nowhere, and sometimes it takes a lot of work in your mind and in your self-belief before you get to that starting point. But you will get there. Make your uniqueness as an individual your strength. And don't ever think for 1 minute that autism can stop you from achieving, because it'll never. If you have the self-belief within you, you can exceed expectations. And you could even surprise even your own family and friends, if you have any, and of how far you can go. And also, never stop believing in yourself. If you stop believing in yourself, then you are going to have a hard time trying to get other people to believe in you. But that said, you don't need other people's approvals and to seek out what you want to achieve in life. Have that self-belief in yourself and seek and strive towards it. I hope this video has provided you a good little overview about autism and neurodiverse traits, and believe you me, there's going to be a lot more content along the way where we do talk about a wide range of topics relating to autistic people in a bit more in more greater detail. And as always, thank you.